It's the game of the year. I know we keep on saying game of the year, game of the year. Chiefs and Eagles being a Super Bowl review and potentially, who knows, preview. This is Philadelphia in Philly. We all know what happened the last time. I mean, I don't know. Was the Eagles Chiefs circled on the calendar by both teams, do you think? In the same way this one was?
No, well, there wasn't the off-season, barbs being thrown back and forth between the Chiefs and Eagles,
nobody on the, like Juju Smith-Schuster didn't call Bradbury trash, right?
right.
For instance.
Yeah.
Can't wait for this one. And he's awesome at doing this job for Fox. And he is back here on the Rich Eisen Show. He is NFL on Fox analyst, Greg Olsen. How are you, Greg? Good to see you.
Doing great. What's up, Rich? Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for doing it. I'm fired up for this game. I mean, I'll just open the floor to you. What are your thoughts here on the Thursday before your trip to Philly here? What do you got for me, Greg?
Well, I'll tell you, I heard you just talking about before I came on, did the Kansas City Philly game from a couple weeks ago, did they have that game Philly circled? When we got our schedule this year, when we found out that our first game of December was going to be a rematch, we were there last year for what was a crazy NFC Championship. I mean, it's unprecedented that a team in the NFC Championship, let alone any game, isn't able to attempt a forward pass. They ended up changing the rule as a direct result. I mean, we watched that game unfold live in front of our eyes, and that second half was interesting to say the least. So now to get a rematch, not just a rematch, but a rematch at this time of the year, playoffs, final couple weeks of the season. December is always the most kind of intense run of the NFL season. I mean, you're right. This is the game of the year. I know last week's game, Philly-Buffalo was great. Philly-Chiefs has been great. Our Philly Dallas game from a few weeks back was amazing. To me, this is the game of the year up until this point, no question.
Well, I mean, Hassan Reddick, you call defensive ends who can sack quarterbacks game wreckers. He legitimately wrecked the game last year. Like, he legitimately, when he got Brock Purdy in his mitts and Brock Purdy needed surgery based on the hit. No, and then you were appropriately pointing out in real time, Greg, Brandon Ayuk was open. So had Reddick not arrived when he did, we could have had a game-tying moment right there. And instead, the game was wrecked 1,000,000% from last year.
Yeah, and I think that's the intrigue, right? I think, that all led to the offseason comments by Deebo Samuel. Oh, well, we played the whole game without a quarterback. We know it would have been different. That defense isn't as good. So the back and forth, I think the unknowns and the what ifs about how that game last year, that NFC Championship last January, how would that have gone down if not for the early injury to Brock Purdy? And then the subsequent injury, the concussion to Josh Johnson, the backup who came in behind him. Again, we haven't ever seen a case where then Purdy had to then re-enter the game. McCaffrey went to Wildcat. It became unlike anything we've ever seen in the NFL. As far, it was like watching NFL football 100 years ago where there was no forward pass. It was interesting on that stage, but again, out of the control of anyone. It was just a freak circumstance. So I think all of that mystery, all of that what would have been of that game carries over now to this week.
And now this week, Purdy's healthy. He's also well past that 3-game losing streak stretch in which he was turnover prone and injury prone as well. And last year, McCaffrey was still kind of, looking for the consistency, even though he came out of the box terrific. He was still new, right? Now he is MVP of the team, potentially, if Purdy's not. And they're performing so well. Deebo had his best game of the year. So how do you see this offense against a defense that was just lit up by Josh Allen? What do you got for me on that?
Yeah, and to me, I think Philly is such a great story. The way they win, their culture, what Nick Sirianni has done there, Jalen Hurts, MVP frontrunner. I mean, all of those things are obvious to anyone who's watched them over the last couple of years. The defensive secondary issue is something that I think everyone keeps an eye on going into every week. And I think that's, if there is one element of the team that hasn't quite kind of fused together to just be consistent week in, week out, here's what we know we're going to be. They have games where they're great, and then they have games where they kind of struggle to put a lid on the passing game and keep it under. So I think that's the element. But as far as Brock Purdy, in that matchup. The thing that stands out to me about Brock is typically there's one of two buckets for most quarterbacks, right? They either are high completion percentage, and typically those balls are at or near the line of scrimmage. They're under 10 yards. There's not a real explosive element to the offense. But not only does Brock Purdy lead the league in completion percentage, he leads the league in passer rating, which, okay, he leads the league in yards per attempt, right? Which is telling me that he is maximizing every throw, their ability to generate explosives. They're the best in the league at it, run and pass. That, to me, is the part that I don't think people recognize. And I think part of it is he gets a lot of it obviously is it's a great scheme. Yes. A lot of it that he's got great skill players around him. Yes. But he's still playing quarterback at a really high level. And I think he needs his praise. He needs his due because he is the point guard of what is an albeit very talented and a very productive offense.
And then let's flip the script here. The Philadelphia offense, they have looked for 3 quarters in a couple of straight games as if they're beaten. It looks like the line of scrimmage is not theirs, despite them being the kings of the brotherly shove. And then all of a sudden, poof, things completely magically change, or not magically change. They have the personnel and the grit and the fortitude to overcome and win. What are you seeing on the offensive side of the ball for Philadelphia that we can all hang our hats on here, Greg? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious stuff is everything you just said. The offensive line, Kelsey, Mailata, Lane Johnson. Hopefully he's back this week. He missed last week's game against Buffalo with kind of re-injuring that nagging groin he's had for the last couple weeks. The last couple seasons. So hopefully he's back and they're healthy. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Talent, again, just like San Francisco, talent is, if you like good players and Pro Bowl players, this is the game, right? But having said that, there's an old saying that would get kicked around a lot. Like, we don't always need your best. We would love that. But we need your best when your best is needed. And I don't think there is a team, an individual Jalen Hurts, that encompasses that entire philosophy. They might struggle in the first quarter. They might struggle for 3 quarters. But when everything is on the line and it's do or die time, they just have that thing you can't put your finger on. You can't quantify it. You almost can't coach it. It is just the nature of their culture there and everything they've built that they are at their best when the game is on the line and needed the most. And that is a very powerful tool in this league, because if you only have one pathway to victory, Rich, if this is the only formula we have to play or else the game goes off the rails, you're going to win games throughout the course of the year, but it's going to be very hard to win consistently because each week presents such a unique challenge. They can win a variety of games. Their path to victory can be a million different directions. Those are the teams that find themselves not only in the playoffs, that's obvious. Those are the teams that are the legitimate Super Bowl run, Super Bowl contenders, because every week their margin for error is so big.
So you're thinking, let's Greg Olsen here in advance of calling with Kevin Burkhardt and the rest of the Fox crew the game of the week, if not game of the year, in Philadelphia, rematch of the NFC Championship game right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what's Kyle Shanahan thinking right now? What's your best guess of what he's thinking Thursday before, Greg?
Yeah, we haven't talked to him yet, so I'm completely speculating. So This is no inside information. Haven't spoke to him yet. Right. I think if I'm Kyle and I take a look at my last couple weeks post-bye, they had that little rut there for a while where they lost 3 in a row. We called their game against Cleveland when they kind of got upset, which started that 3-game losing streak, went into the bye, got healthy. Trent Williams is back. Now this looks like the 49ers team we saw, against Dallas and early in the year. I think if I'm him and I say, okay, what's my best opportunity to win? What's my formula? They need to play with a lead. 2 reasons. One, it fits everything they do as a team, right? They are a run, play, action. They don't want to be in drop back. They don't want to play from behind. They don't want to have to chase points. They want to control the tempo of the game. But their offensive line is more equipped to be run blockers than pass protectors. They do a great job protecting them. Aside from Trent Williams, the rest they can kind of scheme with the play action. And obviously they want McCaffrey to touch the ball 500 times because why wouldn't you? So with that being said, it also now plays against maybe what Philly wants to be. Philly wants to play with a lead. They want to be able to lean on their second half run game and their pass rush to close games out. What we've seen against Philly's defense the last couple of weeks is because they've been trailing and they've had these big come from behind, unbelievable finishes, teams have been able to run the ball on them. Teams have been able to not just drop back and pass and say, all right, I got to chase this lead. And that plays right into the hands of Philly when they just drop back and they get to have Hassan Reddick and Sweat and these guys just rush the passer. The rush yards have gone up a little bit because teams are able to do it more. Who wants to run the ball more than San Francisco? Nobody. So it all just plays into the philosophy. So if I'm Shanahan, I want to get an early lead by being aggressive, make Philly trail me as much as humanly possible, because that allows me to stay in my formula of success that we've seen now for the last couple of years. And it also allows us to play against what Philly does, which is third and long. If you're going to pass rush me, that's a hard matchup for any team. That's not really the strength of San Francisco's offensive line against this Philadelphia pass rush.
Plus, Purdy really hasn't won that game from behind in the fourth quarter. One more drive to go. You know what I mean? We haven't seen that yet from him. And as a matter of fact, those moments, they needed it from him, and that was part of the 3-game losing streak. We didn't see it. We didn't see it in that 3-game losing streak. You know?
Yeah. When you look, a lot of their wins, they're blowing people out.
Right.
They're blowing people out. And you know why you're the best run team in the league? Because you get to hand the ball 25, 30 times a game to McCaffrey because you got a lead. You're not chasing, you're not chasing a score that's gotten away from you. Like, everyone always looks at the raw data of like, okay, you're the best run defense. Well, am I the best run defense because nobody runs against me because I stink defending the pass? Does no one run against me because my offense is really good? So I'm always playing with a lead and other teams can't afford to run. So like, there's always so much more to the numbers. There's always so much more. And when you boil it down to the philosophy, Kyle Shanahan has his style that's been proven that they want to be. And then the other side, Sirianni's got a formula that you could argue has been the best formulas in regards to winning over the last 2 years. So this is high-level coaching, high-level culture, talent everywhere. This is the epitome of NFL football.
Greg Olsen here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'd be remiss if I didn't hit you on a couple other topics, including your Thanksgiving Day game. How real are the Packers, Greg? I mean, right?
Well,
what do you got for me there?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of been interesting. We've kind of seen Green Bay. I've gotten to study them on kind of the bookends of their season, and everything in between has kind of been up and down. You don't really know what to make of it. But we called them week 1 against Chicago, and we came out of Soldier Field saying, wow, like, I don't know how good Chicago is week 1. They're figuring out, but Green Bay looked the part and Jordan Love looked the part. And then we saw them. They've had ups and downs. They wanted to give up on Jordan Love. And then the last 3 weeks, and we talked about it at the open of the show, we said, these last 3 weeks, if they can get this Jordan Love and these young playmakers that are dynamic, inexperienced, yes, mistake prone, sure, but they are fast. They are athletic. They are explosive. That element of their offense really started to come together for 3 weeks leading up to that Detroit game. So we kind of came into the Detroit game saying, if the defense can hold up and not make this a 35-point plus game, they got a shot. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. That defensive line, which was really the only healthy element of Green Bay, they dominated the game. Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith, they dominated the game. And Jordan Love played his 4th game in a row that was his best game of his career, albeit his young career. So I think when it's said and done, you're talking about that 7th seed, that 3rd wild card. Are they not better than Atlanta? Are they not better than? I would argue that they are.
Right. You also got the Vikings in that mix at 6-6 right now. The Rams have come on strong. They're 5-6 as well. And they can absolutely catch a little bit of fire here. And, they got Kansas City on Sunday night. So that would be quite a shocker for them to get to 500 that way. And what about the Lions, man? I mean, you got them fresh off of the snatching victory out of the jaws of defeat against Chicago. And then that wasn't just an outlier because Love was playing well. I mean, Rashawn Gary got after it. You were talking about the health of that Packers defensive line, and that's the strength of Detroit on offense is that offensive line. They got hit in the mouth, man. They got crushed on that day. What's your level of concern for Detroit, Greg?
Yeah, Detroit Lions fans hate us. Detroit's only lost 3 games. They've only lost 3 games, and unfortunately, we've called all 3.
Oh, you're the voice of their misery. I didn't know that. So, we just discovered that. I had no idea. Okay.
For any Detroit Lions fans, we apologize. It is, I promise you.
Okay.
It is not. It's not. We don't wish anything on anyone.
Let's look at it the other way. At least you're not in New Orleans for them this week, Greg.
Fair.
You won't be there.
Fair.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they're saved. They're saved from us. But no, I think. I really like Detroit. First of all, I love Dan Campbell. I think Dan Campbell is the perfect mix of old school grit, toughness, motivation, but he also views the game as a very modern coach, right? And I know the fourth down stuff kind of didn't go his way, 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 on the fourth down tries. That's been him since he took over in 21. He believes in the culture of being aggressive. Winning creates more winning habits. He's been true to that since game one when they started out struggling in 21 before they flipped this thing mid last year. So with that being said, what got away from them in that Green Bay game is when we talk about being able to play different styles of offense, right? Being able to play different styles to victory. That style didn't play great for them because they fell behind. And when they're chasing points and they're not in that play action mode and they're not under center and they're not using their run actions to open their run game and vice versa, that's the Ben Johnson offense. That's the beauty of what makes that offense, in my opinion, the best offense in the league from a scheme standpoint is the Ben Johnson, the Kyle Shanahan, McVay. That tree of guys, I think, is the best offense. It's just hard to play from behind in it. It's such a run action, play action, under center, boots, nakeds, that all of a sudden now you're chasing a 2-score deficit late in the second half, and I got to be drop back shotgun. And that's when we saw Green Bay's defensive line really take it to them. So again, formula for success and how games line up either play into or out of what you're good at. And I think Thursday was the perfect example of the game got out of the style that Detroit wants to play and trying to play from behind there. They had a couple turnovers, sacks, pressures, and it just kind of spiraled. And they, it came down to a couple fourth down failures, and they were one possession short there at the end.
Yeah, the problem is, though, is the team they're chasing in the conference just won a bunch of games or on a heater right now, winning games that aren't going their way or aren't going the tempo that they like, right? The Eagles were able to overcome it, and the Lions have succumbed to it, and that's the team they're going to have to go maybe into their lair on a divisional weekend, or who knows, and win. Like that's the rub right here for Detroit,
Absolutely. And listen, are they capable of beating anyone any given week? Absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree.
There is no question about it. From a scheme standpoint, talent standpoint, again, offensive line, that plays well at the end of the year. I mean, I would say most football people say, all right, Philly's the best and Detroit's like 1B. They're right behind them as far as 5 guys that can play at a high level, run and pass. Again, Thursday notwithstanding. So they can win but again, this is about increasing your odds, increasing your pathways to victory. What's in your best likelihood? There's no question Detroit would love the playoffs to come through, at least host, have them come through and host playoff games as much as possible. That is a great place to play. It is loud. Their fans are great. That is not an easy place. It's a different animal now having to go to Philly or go to, Dallas or, however the whole thing shakes out. But barring a sudden collapse of Philly or a sudden hot streak by Detroit, I don't know if there's enough time left for them to catch them.
Last thing for you here, Greg, and it requires a little bit of a wind up because I have worked with people who are terrific on the air who want to coach. And, Dion, as we all know, he's killing it at Colorado. I worked with him for a long time. Steve Mariucci, I remember a few Super Bowls ago, a long time ago, Washington came knocking on his door, and he really thought hard about it. And there is a report out there that you might be interested in the Carolina Panthers head coaching job. And I'd love to ask you what you have to say on that subject matter.
Yeah,
Greg.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that became a kind of a big story this week and whatnot. And obviously there's a lot of speculation and rumor and whatnot. I think the best thing I would say is who wouldn't, right? Obviously this is a city that I love. This is a team that I played the bulk of my career for. I want to see them have success. I live here. My kids are here. We want to see the Carolina Panthers return to, the level that we were able to have a good 5-6 year run where we were one of the more relevant, one of the better stories in the NFL year in and year out playing in the playoffs. Like, of course I want that for them. I love Chris Tabor, the interim coach there. Me and Chris go all the way back to Chicago. He was a young special teams coach when I was in Chicago. We've had a good friendship all the way through these years before, obviously before joining Carolina these last couple of seasons. So I want them to do well. So I would be crazy if they said, hey, listen, is this something you talk to us about? To entertain and take that conversation, I think that's fairly obvious, right? This is a game that I've loved. This is a game that I've been involved in now my entire life. And at the NFL level, almost 20 years. So that's what I'll say about that. How that all plays out, I don't know. I love doing what I'm doing right now, calling games, studying games. I love doing this. How that future unfolds, a lot of moving parts. Again, a lot of this is out of any of our control and whatnot. What I will say, though, which I think is a larger question and a larger conversation that has nothing to do with me.
Yes, sir.
Right? We saw it last year with Jeff Saturday taking over. I think there is an instant reaction that unless you've climbed the ladder from assistant to the assistant to the assistant, all the way up through coordinator to that unless you've lived the NFL lifestyle in that ladder, that you can't be successful. And I think we have to be careful saying experience leads to competence. I think there's a lot of experienced guys who are very incompetent, and there's a lot of inexperienced guys who are highly competent in all industries. We see it a lot in baseball. We see it in basketball where guys, look at John Lynch. John Lynch had no experience in personnel, and I'd say he's done a good job. So I think we just have to be careful thinking that experience is the only prerequisite to being good at anything, coaching, broadcasting. We see it in all other industries. So I've lived in this world for 20 years. I've learned the ins and outs of it. Now I study it from a different angle. I don't necessarily think that in order to eventually get into being a coach and running a team, it has to be the only way we've ever known for 50 years. And and everyone else is not a candidate. And that has nothing to do with me. That has to do just with the industry. There's a lot of really smart, good football people. Look at John Lynch is the most recent great example. And they've built arguably the best roster in football.
Yeah. And your answer right there, Greg, is proof again of why you're so good at what you do and what you're going to do Sunday for Fox as well. That's you were just genuine right there. And that shows in your broadcast. And again, I've been around a bunch of players, former players like yourself, who are great at broadcasting, who have this placed in front of them as potentially an opportunity or not. And it's a difficult question to answer because a lot of people might think that means you're not happy with your current situation in broadcasting, and that's not it at all. No, that these opportunities are like unicorns if they are available to you, and it's just something that you would be, I guess, interested in coaching is what you're saying, Greg.
Yeah, this is not something I'm chasing. This is not something I'm calling. This is not something I'm actively pursuing. I would call the A game at Fox for 30 years if that was what was in the cards. But again, we all know how this whole world works, right? You know it. People come and go. Opportunities come and go. You don't. So I'm just never a believer in anything of just slamming the door on anything that you love and anything that you're passionate about. I think we all entertain opportunities. And whether the opportunity comes or not, I don't know, right? It's a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical situation. And that's why, so to me, that's one half the equation. And the other half the equation is in this hypothetical, scenario, why not? And again, not me.
I got you.
Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom, whoever.
Yeah.
Why can't former players who have learned the ins and outs of football and been around it for 20 plus years, just because it wasn't in the assistant coach world, but it was in a very similar, highly involved, highly stressful locker room. Why not? Why do we just dismiss that as a pathway? I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation for people to have because other sports don't dismiss it. Other sports are open to it. I don't have the answer. I just think it's an interesting conversation.
Well, you know who would say that all the time? I would hear it all the time from him. I heard it a lot from Marshall Faulk and Deion Sanders. And Deion is the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year today. You know what I mean? So, Greg, in the meantime, you are, I say it every time. I don't care how many times you're awesome at what you do. I can't wait to listen to you and Kevin describe the action on Sunday for a monster game. Let's do this again soon. Thanks again, Greg. I appreciate it. You the man.
I would love to. It's always great to be on.
Right back at you, man. That's Greg Olsen, everybody. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern for free.